All right, so I got to try out about 12 different no-code apps, and for me, my goal was to find one that would be best for building a mobile app. And so I tried out all these different ones, and when I say I tried them out, I really like went into depth on them. So for some of them, I literally like I attempted to build the full app in the platform. For others, I went through all the process of like connecting my database and all these different things. But pretty much the gist of it is like I really got into them, and I got to see the pros and cons of each one. I got to see which ones are an absolute no, never for nobody for any project. Um, I got to see all of that. So what I want to do is share that with you, and hopefully this video is helpful in helping you to decide what platform would be best for you based on your particular circumstance, because I would recommend certain ones based on certain things. So I will get into that and explain all that as we get into the video. Alright, so first one I want to dive into is Appy Pie. This one is like horrific, and I'm not just saying that, I'm going to actually show why I wouldn't ever recommend it to anybody, considering there are better options that would be better and well worth your time. First, these are the colors that they let you choose from, and then what does it even mean to choose these different colors? So we won't even worry about it. We're just gonna click through and see where it takes us. I want to show you the interface for it real fast, so you can also roll it out as well. We have this beautiful, beautiful app, as you can see, and I'm already like just sad, just sad and disappointed. So I'm gonna just or let me customize it so it truly is mine. Okay, the buttons don't work. Okay, so we're gonna click save and continue. Oh, okay. We're into Appy Pie, and I can now see this dashboard that honestly looks more like a hosting company dashboard, like when you log into your hosting, like you see all this nonsense that you don't need and never asked for. And I already find that I already knew like logging into it, this wouldn't be for me. It's a bad start for sure. So we'll click into it. Again, lots of stuff, when really you're here to like build your app and get like your dream and vision out there. I already am it's set up in such a weird way. So if I go to edit and customize, again, it's not very clear. It's saying that you can add these different boxes and links. There's no drag and drop builder. It's just odd. I literally have no idea what's going on here. So it's really ugly. The interface is really clunky, and I would never recommend it, because if you're gonna not be able to drag and drop, then just go with one of the automated builders like Glide, which I'll show in a second. And then if you're gonna drag and drop, there are better options. So I would never recommend Appy Pie. I hope you can see it's not necessarily the greatest interface. Next, in my desperation looking for like the perfect no-code mobile app builder, I saw GeneXus was one of the top like no-code platforms, or it's actually more like low-code, they say. And so I got into this one as well, and I definitely would never recommend it, unless you're an enterprise, but I am speaking to probably like solopreneurs. So I wouldn't recommend it because it's made for enterprise level companies, so there's a very hefty learning curve. You need to download certain tools. You need to learn so much in how to hook it up. It's like a mini version of like learning how to learn a programming language from scratch. Like, that's how much content is in there. And I went through like a quarter of it, I believe, and skipped to the end for some parts. And I'm like, how does this ever get to design? So It's an interesting platform. I can't show it because I uninstalled all the different parts to it, but you know, just trust me here. Don't bother with it unless you're like a big company. All right, so next up is AWS Amplify. I don't know if a lot of people talk about this in the no-code world. It claims to be like this quick app builder where you can build native apps, and it really requires kind of a lot. It's Amazon, so in other words, the interface is not the best. So I went through this. I went to set it up. I think I connected some things, or no, I think I mostly went through the tutorials to get started. I had like Flutter installed and things like that because it like works with these different components, and it has like documentation on how to connect it to platforms like Ionic, and I went through some of those different steps because I like to see how does this work, how does this look actually. So I wouldn't recommend it because it's a bit more complicated and it's not as easy as it appears up front. You actually need to build these different components, and while it claims to let you drag and drop, you still have to like put the components there in the first place, and then you essentially like pull that code into the app you're already building in like Visual Studio or ADK. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. So, moving on. Next up is an interesting one. This is Bravo, and Bravo caught my attention because it was designer first, and I had all my different app screens designed, and so I logged into it again. I followed the tutorials. I'm moving forward, like trying to build this full app here, and one big issue is that they require you to use Figma to get started, and I had a few issues with the app in terms of it actually being able to do what it claims to do, and I won't lie, I didn't get far enough to test it out. All I know for sure is I definitely have doubts about how well it can take your Figma designs and Figma screens and turn it into a functional app, which means you can now click on things and attach workflows to things and connect to your database and pull from your database. It's a bit hard to believe, so I didn't get that far, though, I'll say that. But what I did do is I copied a few of my screens over into Figma, which I don't ever really use, and I attempted to import them into the app. And you have to follow a very particular way of building out these screens with very particular layers, with very particular sizes. I would not recommend it. If you are a business and you have someone that has done all your different designs and they did them in Figma and they did iPad versions and phone versions, you could give Bravo a try. There's better tools though. I would say Bravo's a no, but if you're in that situation and you're comparing it with some of the other top apps I'm gonna recommend, I would maybe keep it in the back of your mind as something to maybe test out if you have someone that, has built all these different Figma designs, knows Figma, and can then move into Bravo and get those actually connected. So next one is Thunkable. This one is weird. It's a bit odd, and it's not my favorite one. The thing I was like trying to move into these things like quickly. Like I had my database set up in Zano, and I was just like flying in and out of these. Like, can I build it in this? Can I build it in this? What is the best platform? So this one, I got into it, and I stopped on the data because, well, there's two things I stopped on actually. I stopped on the data sources. So I opened this up. I was like, okay, let me create some data so you can connect different things. But I was like, I like it if you can create a database within the platform itself. And so I clicked on that, and it's like testing it out. And then it showed me this, and I was not into whatever this is. Like, I was like, oh, do you, what am I looking at? Like, do you put your titles here? And I was like, oh no, okay, oh, it looks like you can edit the titles here. And then, did I already name this table? Can you name the table? Oh, okay, but you can add a table, but the database is named this. So it was already just like immediately not intuitive enough to me. And it's not that I can't learn these things. It's more so if you're like trying to figure out what's going to be best for you as you're building something, what you want is an intuitive, great UI from the jump. If you get into something and it's immediately complicated, you aren't going to have a good time building out your app. You're not going to have a fun time, because if this is what they think is good UI, you know, when you're just creating a database, like, this is simple, let me do the schema for it, let me clearly see the table names, let me do a description or something. Have it set up in a way that looks good and makes sense. If they can't get that right, then you can already assume the rest of the app isn't going to flow very smoothly for you. So for that reason, I was like, okay, I'm really not liking Thunkable already. So the next thing that really got me is these like just hideous blocks. I am not into these really at all, and I know what they're going for. That is clear to me. Like, they wanted to have something fun and intuitive. They wanted it to feel like a little puzzle. But I'm personally not into them, and as you can see here, they kind of get a bit bulky and they kind of get a bit complicated. I've seen workflows done in so many different places so much better, so I decided I'm not going to bother with this. And I've seen apps, there are better platforms pretty much that let you build a mobile app that don't have this sort of a clunky workflow setup. So for that reason, I would not recommend Thunkable. You know, it's definitely not in like the top, the top 3, best ones. So for Appsheet, I don't remember like really getting into this one or seeing like in depth what it has to offer, but what I do know is it's very similar to Glide. So I'd probably just go with Glide to start if you're going to be doing one of these apps where you're going to be like, you want to turn all of your data sheets into an app, like exactly what they advertise. Glide is one that I actually got to get into. I would totally recommend it actually if you have the scenario of like having all of these different sheets and you want to get all that data into a place where you can easily look through everything and adjust certain elements of that data, of those things that you are going to be managing in your database. I'd say Glide is really good for that. And so in that case, I wouldn't even really waste time bothering with Appsheet, because Glide has some really cool features. I got to use it, but it didn't fit my purposes because I wanted something significantly more robust. So next one is Buildfire. For Buildfire, I genuinely believe that like the people that created this app, they had the greatest intentions. Like, for some reason I can tell that. I know they wanted to create this amazing platform that lets you like build your dream app like easily and quickly, all of that good stuff. But I don't think they have like a good sense of user interface and usability. And so when I went to try out this platform, it was very much like Thunkable. Like, you get into it and you're like, I don't think this is actually going to work very well for me, because they aren't getting like these simple things together. So it's a platform that like, just seeing how it works, it doesn't seem to have like really great funding, because if I'm remembering correctly, there were things like drag and drop, like their drag and drop system. I don't think they had one. So you had to like click on things to add certain things to a list, and it was like immediately frustrating to use. So I didn't stick around very long at all. I didn't like bother to set up a database or anything like that. Um, it was very clunky, and you're not going to like get in there and quickly build an app. I can easily say that. So for Buildfire, I kind of had to rule this one out. So next one is Draftbit. I have a test application open here because I want to show off like why I didn't go with it. It initially like it really held some promise to me when I first saw it, and I was certain I'd be using it to build the app. But there was a few things that held me back, and one of those things was actually like the pricing and how the pricing was set up with the app. The people, they only had it so you could get like, you had to buy like a year to do the individual plan, and that was like $708. So I like pleaded with them. I'm like, you need to change those. I think over a couple months I was saying that to them, like, because I did a trial, and then I got busy. I didn't get to use the trial, so I like reached out to see if they could renew the trial. And I again was like, you need to make this so people can try it out on a monthly basis as an individual, not as a team. So lo and behold, somehow at some point they added in that extra option. So that's really great. But once I got past that, there were kind of other issues with it. I felt like it had mostly everything I needed, and it certainly seems like you can do a lot with it in terms of functionality. But when I got into it, I'd say one of the main issues is that it's very slow. So that was something that definitely stood out to me. I think another thing was that it didn't let me do Lottie files, and I needed to have those sorts of animations pulled in dynamically, and it didn't really have the functionality for that. So for this one, I started using it anyway, just to see if maybe I want to use it for the future. And it's really slow. It pulls your resources heavily, but still doesn't work. And it's pretty frustrating to work with that way. And then on top of that, there's a delay in everything that you do. So if I want to add something, I want to add a banner, like, that's how long it takes for it to show up. And then you have to select the container again for it to actually go where you want it to go. And then if you want to delete something, there's no right click. So you can't just select something and delete it. You have to come over here where there's also no right click, and then select what you want to do. All of that coming together, I decided against Draftbit. I wouldn't even really recommend it at all because there's a much better alternative to it, which is FlutterFlow, which I'm going to show in a second. So I would see literally no reason to recommend Draftbit over FlutterFlow. For that reason, I wouldn't recommend Draftbit at all, actually. Alright, so AppGyver is interesting because it's like totally free, I believe. You know, you're gonna pay just like your standard Apple developer fees and things like that, and the Google Play fees. But the composer is totally free, so whatever you want to do after that is free. So that's really nice. So with AppGyver, I actually worked with it for quite a while, and I went into depth on it. There is definitely like a heavy learning curve for it, but once you get used to it, you can kind of move a lot quicker within the platform. But there's a lot of little frustrating things with this app, and some of the things are how you set up data. There's like so many different pieces when it comes to data, and I don't feel like the developers like had to do this to us. So what's odd is you have data resources, so these are the different ways that you connect your database. So they allow you to do it by just using like Firebase is something they have built in. Like, so in other words, like, it's easier to connect that because they're essentially like ready for it. But you can also hook up any REST API. So I hooked up Zano to test it out because Firebase in this case was very frustrating, or kind of wonky to set up without this schema support. So they have data resources, so you can connect all these different types of data resources. But then if you come over to UI Canvas to see your variables, you have to select variables. And then on this page, you have app variables, page parameters, and data variables. And these are all different things. So if you select variables, you have these like data variables work in a different way than page variables and app variables. You have to, data variables essentially like pull from your data resources, so your data connectors, and that is the only way to get that data from your database. So in other words, if you're working on your homepage and you just want to pull in like the user's name really quickly, you have to do this full setup to get these variables created. And with data variables, you can't pull them directly into the page. You actually have to then translate them into page variables. So there's so much, I'd say, nonsense. I truly think it's nonsense because I know the developers can like set that up in a way that makes a bit more sense, because every other platform I've used hasn't like done this sort of runaround when it comes to just, pulling the data that you need. And I did work with that system for a while, but eventually, pretty much when I was testing out the app, I put a lot of work into this one page in particular, and then I went to view it on my phone. It didn't look anything like what it showed me in the browser, or in the viewer. And I think that's what made me, I was just questioning things, and I went back to FlutterFlow to try it for a last time. And I'm really glad I did that. So in other words, AppGyver it's a bit frustrating, and it's a bit odd. I wouldn't even call it frustrating. There's a learning curve, and once you get used to how it works, you kind of can get into a flow. But it's still wonky, and I still think there's so many different steps that you have to take to, just get the user's first name. Other platforms just do it so much better. And again, AppGyver falls into the category of, I have no reason to recommend this over like FlutterFlow, or even Adalo. So with that, I'd say AppGyver isn't really anything I would recommend. It doesn't really win over, at least to me, it doesn't win over FlutterFlow in any real way. And then another weird thing about AppGyver is when you every time you do something, you have to click the save button, which is odd, but I was like, okay, that's fine, sure. Everything else auto saves. But when you click the save button, it puts the notification right over this bar that your work was saved. And so you have to wait like 5-10 seconds for it to disappear before you can now proceed and move on to what you were working on. And I think that's the oddest UI hiccup, or UX hiccup actually. So yeah, so with that, I would not recommend AppGyver. I abandon AppGyver, that's for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Next up is Adalo. I actually do really like this platform. It's more robust than it appears. Like, it seems like it would potentially be like a cheaper builder, but once I got into it, I realized it really does let you do the things you need to do. You can connect an external database if you need to, but it does allow you to create a database internally as well. And it has like a lot of different features. So one of the big things is like it lets you, if you need to do a repeating group or a repeating container where you're like, I have a list of things and I want to show different elements of that thing in every single list item. So if you want it to do that, it lets you fully customize that aspect of things. And it lets you do surprisingly so much more. And with a really good amount of customization, you can really make it look how you want it to. And in that way, Adalo is like really great. So I actually would recommend it if you need to do something simple. The reason I didn't stick with it like too long, I actually did use it for about like 2 apps, like building out 2 different apps. But I didn't use it long term because it didn't have enough functionality for me. But I know for the average person, Adalo definitely will do what you need it to. And it has a very easy user interface. I'm not sure about the launching and mobile deployment side of it, but from what I've seen using it myself, it's a solid platform with a great UI. I have no gripes with it, no complaints, no frustration with it. It works smoothly. It's drag and drop. You can pull in data easily. It works, and I would definitely recommend it. Next is Bubble. I think of all the no-code platforms, I think Bubble is probably my favorite in terms of being able to like go into a platform and have your like world-class product come out on the other side. Like, it is so good for that. You can quickly get in, you can do all sorts of workflows, all sorts of logic. It cuts the process on everything. I'm certain that in the back end, it's like horrifying because it's built using JavaScript. You can't see the code or anything, but with all the functionality and all that it allows you to do, all the deep searches and queries, I'm sure it's a bit complicated on the back end. I use this for building web apps, and I've done that professionally for a while now using Bubble, and it only gets better. They recently released the official like responsive engine, which was in beta for a while, and that works great. They definitely could improve significantly in that building side of things and making sure your app is responsive, but it gives you the tools to do what you need to do, and that's totally fine with me. So with Bubble, I found that you can like truly do everything because you can do custom stuff, you can do custom code, and it's really quick, it's really easy, and it's a very intuitive platform. I got into it, didn't really feel there was too much of a learning curve. There's certain like really deep queries where you have to think logically, like, how do I work with what Bubble has here to get what I want? But I don't think I consider that a learning curve too much. It's more so like, you know, you have to problem solve, but they do have the tools that you need. So Bubble is definitely my number one, but it is generally for web apps. So one of the things here is I didn't use this for the mobile app that I'm doing because it requires you to be online because it's a web platform. So you can't really use it offline. And so if you want to do a mobile app using Bubble, you have to use this BDK, and this lets you turn any Bubble web app into a mobile app. And I was looking into it, but again, I needed to make sure it had offline features that I could utilize. And as far as I know, this doesn't have it, and there's a couple more BDKs that people are creating for the Bubble platform, so you can release mobile apps. But those are really, like, they're still in development. But I am certain at some point that, like, Bubble will release, like, full-blown mobile features, and that would be great, honestly. That was the big drawback for me. Otherwise I could have built the app so quickly using Bubble. But I do want to explain shortly why I really like FlutterFlow actually over Bubble in certain cases, and why it's honestly kind of hard for me to say which is truly the best, because they both have some really great pros, that's for sure. So when it comes to Bubble and building a mobile app, you definitely can. If you're okay with your users needing to be online, Bubble will work for you. I did not get to use this BDK personally, but it has great reviews from what I can see. Bubble is like fully behind it, so I assume that means there's good backing, the guy's keeping it up to date, and it works well too. So other than that, Bubble really nails just so much for me, and if I was doing a mobile app, I would consider doing one in Bubble. At the moment, I'd say if I'm about to build another mobile app, I would go to FlutterFlow actually. And FlutterFlow, I tried it out. It wasn't really doing what I needed it to. There was like errors and things, and I just like kind of immediately left it. But I went back to it after using AppGyver for a while, and FlutterFlow has been just an amazing platform, backed by an amazing team and an amazing community as well. It's absolutely awesome, and there's ultimately no limitations, and I like how transparent FlutterFlow is as well. So keep it simple. If you're building a mobile app, I would recommend FlutterFlow, because as much as I love Bubble and as much as we can try out that BDK, FlutterFlow is probably going to be the better choice, and it's still what I would choose if I was building another mobile app, and I actually am working on one right now. And the reason why is I can see the code, so if anything happened to the platform, you know, I have the actual raw code of the app I'm building, and it's built using Flutter, which was created by Google and allows you to just have one code base for deploying on multiple apps and building on these native platforms. So I absolutely love that that's an option, and I am always discovering new things. You can go into the community and you can, you know, say, here's what's awesome about it, here's what's would be cool if you add it in there. I swear, like every 2 weeks they have a new big update that adds a new, like, super useful features. I absolutely love the platform for so many reasons, and it lets you connect Google Firebase, and it takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting. So it will let you connect Firebase, and you don't have to go back into Firebase too much, really. You can create your collections here. You can easily pull in data here as well, so you can query different things. You can query documents, you can query collections. I find that I'm always able to do what I need to. And if there's something that the app doesn't do that you need it to, you can click on custom code, and you can do custom functions, custom widgets, and custom actions. And this is where you are coding with Dart, and you can use this whole repository of a very useful widgets built by the community, like these packages that you can import into your custom code to then do even cooler things like confetti. Like, you can do all sorts of things, and I feel like because they have this custom code option in here, there's really no limitations with it. So when I kind of couple that together, and I'm thinking about, you know, I can have this be offline because they have local states, and these are essentially variables that you can have offline on the app. And because you can connect Firebase easily and manage the data strictly within FlutterFlow, you can do custom functionality for any like little features that you need, and even if you're like new to coding, you can look up some of these things and, you know, go for it, try it out. I'll definitely have some tutorials on how to do it, based on what you need. And everything else is just really easy. So you can set up all the critical details here. You can set your theme and your colors and what it's going to look like for dark mode versus light mode. You can set up your typography, and you can pull from Google. I pretty much only use Google fonts, so that works out perfect. You can set your nav bar and the colors for it. It takes care of so much heavy lifting. You can set up authentication and push notifications. It's very helpful when you're doing mobile deployment as well. It utilizes code magic to turn your Flutter code into the code needed to build iOS apps and Google apps, and it just has so much more. Like it lets you connect to GitHub, where the way I'm using it is I'm testing on my Android phone, and what I do is I push the code directly to GitHub instead of like doing the testing deployments. Now I push it to GitHub, and then I pull it in Android Studio, so I can like quickly test the new changes on my phone. There's just an incredible amount of features here, and everything they have here is designed to help you like just get your app out there and do it in a way that's going to actually work. Like Flutter is such a like big, well supported language. So having your app be built on Flutter in a way where you can still see the code is, just trust me, like it is absolutely a plus. So I would definitely recommend FlutterFlow. If you find it a bit frustrating, I still think it's worth it to just like go into the community, make sure you follow the tutorials. You know, there is some steps I skipped, and that definitely slowed down my pace a little bit because I skipped some steps. So I would definitely watch the tutorials, take the time to do that, because it is a great platform. It is drag and drop, so you can add in the different things that you need. It actually works. It's not very laggy. You can edit all these different things. It's essentially, to me, a low-code platform, but I'd say the low-code side of it is simply where the functionality can shine if you know what you're doing. But in general, I'd like to know that you can build what you need with the widgets that they have here. And if you really have to have something more, the options are there to do your custom code. So that's why I like using it. There's just so many things where even if you don't need it, it's really nice to know it's there. Because if you want to pay someone $50 to write a custom function for you, you know, that still does cost less than $365, you know, for building an app with Bubble, which is my other favorite no-code platform. So FlutterFlow definitely wins out, and I've actually never really been part of a platform like it where it's being actively developed, but you know, everybody, the developers, the community is just so great, and there's so much support for it. It's using a language that's really like booming right now and very useful. So I definitely recommend FlutterFlow. Easy choice for the winner. If you want to do something really quick and really simple, I'd go with Adalo. So yeah, that's about it. Bye.